10 years ago, Jeremy Wade had a private list in his mind, a mental catalog of the most dangerous, mysterious, and awe-inspiring freshwater creatures in the world. At the time, the idea of tracking them all down seemed nearly impossible. Never truly imagined he would reach the end of that list. But he did. And when he finally crossed off the last name, he made a decision few television hosts ever dare to make. He chose to end his journey. That journey was river monsters. When river monsters disappeared from television, fans were stunned. There was no dramatic public explanation, no drawn-out farewell tour. One day, the show that had pulled millions of viewers into murky waters, terrifying myths, and high-stakes encounters was simply gone. It had been a global phenomenon for 9 intense seasons, hosted by one of the most respected figures in wildlife television. So why did it end? What happened behind the scenes? And why would such a top-rated series vanish at the height of its success? The answer was surprisingly rare in television and oddly satisfying. The truth was that Jeremy Wade had caught every monster on his list. The series didn't lose steam. It wasn't derailed by internal drama or network politics. Instead, River Monsters concluded because it had fulfilled its original mission. In an era where many shows stretched themselves thin, diluting their essence just to stay alive, River Monsters did something almost unheard of. It ended at the top. From the very beginning, this wasn't just a fishing show. It was part expedition, part detective story, and part wildlife thriller. Every season was built around a bigger goal: to track down legendary freshwater creatures that had haunted local folklore, terrorized river communities, and puzzled scientists for decades. These weren't ordinary fish. Some, like giant catfish, were accused of drowning villagers. Others, like the massive Arapima, were as long as small cars. And then there was the infamous Goliath tigerfish. With its razor-sharp teeth, Wade's personal white whale. A fish he chased for over 20 years before finally catching it in Season 2. Each season was another chapter in this quest. Viewers followed Wade through the Congo, the Amazon, the Himalayan foothills, and the swamps of Southeast Asia. He refused to settle for easy catches or secondhand stories. Every fish had to have mystery, danger, and deep ecological importance. But with each success, his list grew shorter. By the time the final season aired in 2017, the truth was unavoidable. The legends were gone. Animal Planet didn't cancel River Monsters in the traditional sense. They celebrated it. Executives praised Wade's unmatched skill at transforming scientific curiosity into edge-of-your-seat storytelling. Yet, they also acknowledged that the very premise of the show, hunting the last great river legends, had reached its natural end. Wade himself put it plainly in a press release 10 years ago. I had a list in my head which seemed impossibly ambitious at the time, but everything has now been ticked off and then some. For fans, the ending was bittersweet. They wanted more, but they also knew Wade had achieved something rare. He had nothing left to prove. He had stared down the most feared freshwater predators in history, pulled them into the light, and told their stories with honesty and awe. In the world of television, where most people fight to keep a show alive, Wade walked away a winner. The untold cost behind the scenes while the show appeared polished and thrilling. The reality of making River Monsters was far more grueling than viewers realized. Wade wasn't just battling elusive fish. He was enduring some of the harshest environments on Earth. Filming often took place in remote jungles, unmarked riverbanks, and politically unstable regions, far from any comforts or safety nets. Reaching these locations meant days of travel, sometimes on foot, sometimes in fragile dugout canoes hauling camera gear, fishing equipment, and survival supplies through dense vegetation and suffocating humidity. There were no trailers, no luxuries, no shortcuts. Wade contracted malaria more than once. He collapsed from exhaustion under scorching tropical heat. Insect bites swelled to the size of tennis balls, and infections threatened to turn deadly. Nights were spent in mosquito net tents, surrounded by howling wildlife, oppressive heat, the constant awareness that help was often days away. In those isolated places, one slip on wet rocks, a bite from a venomous creature, or a confrontation with a crocodile could have been fatal. The risk was constant. Wade admitted that there were moments when he questioned whether the show was worth it, yet his obsession with documenting misunderstood, feared and forgotten species kept him going. The psychological strain was just as taxing as the physical. Hardships. Weeks of isolation, constant cultural adaptation, and the pressure of leading a small crew while delivering high-quality episodes took their toll. Wade rarely spoke of these struggles during filming, keeping the focus on the fish, the people, and the myths. Only after the show ended did he begin to open up, revealing just how much the decade-long adventure had cost him. Why the show had to end for outsiders. It might seem like river monsters could have continued forever. After all, there are millions of rivers, thousands of species, and endless local legends. But Wade knew better. From the start, river monsters had a very specific mission and a clear finish line. The list in his head wasn't infinite. It was made up of creatures that weren't just rare, but wrapped in folklore, fear, and scientific mystery. For 9 seasons, he found them all. Wade refused to dilute the show with filler content or repeat episodes just for the sake of staying on air. He knew that the magic of river monsters depended on authenticity. If there was no compelling mystery or genuine danger, it didn't belong in the series. So, instead of letting the show fade, he ended it with integrity, turning the final season into a celebration of everything they had achieved. The last episodes revisited unforgettable locations, tied up loose ends, and even pursued final legendary threats, such as a mysterious sea creature in uncharted waters and deadly reef, predators in Indonesia. But as Wade pulled the last fish from the depths, the show's true goodbye wasn't about the animals anymore. It was about preserving something pure. Why Jeremy Wade refused a reboot in modern television. Few hits are allowed to end gracefully. When a successful series wraps up, the industry usually tries to revive it with spin-offs, sequels, or reboots. River Monsters was no exception. The offers came quickly. Networks floated ideas for new hosts, ocean-based spin-offs, or even a legacy format where Wade would mentor a successor. He turned them all down. For Wade, River Monsters wasn't just a fishing show. It was about mystery, tension, conservation, and truth. He feared that any attempt to recreate the magic would inevitably cheapen it, turning a serious, authentic adventure into a flashy reality gimmick. Throughout the original series, he had fought to keep the tone serious, the science accurate, and the respect for nature intact. His refusal wasn't about ego, it was about principle. He believed that ending with integrity was more important than stretching the concept for profit. And so, instead of chasing more airtime, Wade stepped back, letting River Monsters stand on its own as a modern television legend. The monsters had been caught, the myths had been honored, and the mystery, rather than being drained dry, was left to rest in peace. Jeremy Wade wanted the final season of River Monsters to be exactly that, the final chapter, not a setup for more. There would be no dangling cliffhangers, no neatly packaged handoff to another host, and certainly no watering down of its identity. It was a deliberate choice that echoed one of television's most famous farewells. When Michael Landon wrapped up Little House on the Prairie, he literally blew up the entire town of Walnut Grove, a bold gesture to make it clear that the story was over. Wade didn't need explosives to make his point, but the resolve behind his decision carried the same weight. He didn't want someone else to take over River Monsters and turn it into something unrecognizable. To him, the show was deeply personal. Every episode reflected his voice, his values, and his vision. Allowing it to continue without him would have been like letting a stranger rewrite his life's work. While some fans were disappointed that the show wouldn't live on in a new form, many respected him for standing his ground. In an entertainment world where most properties are recycled endlessly, Wade's refusal to compromise stood out. It was his quiet way of preserving the integrity of a show that had always been about depth, not duration. He wasn't just protecting a television series, he was safeguarding a legacy, one built on curiosity, discipline, and courage. That wasn't something he was willing to trade for another paycheck or extra airtime. For nearly a decade, Wade had told stories no one else could tell, introducing viewers to mysterious creatures they had never heard of, and doing it with an awe that was completely authentic. So when it was over, he didn't look back. Yet just as audiences began to understand his decision, Wade revealed another side of the story, one that had never made it into the show. For years, he had stayed mostly silent about the experience. Now, for the first time, he began to speak openly. What he shared next surprised even his most loyal fans, and it wasn't the last time Jeremy Wade shocked people with his honesty. For years, speculation swirled about the real reason River Monsters ended. Was it exhaustion? Declining ratings? Network politics? Wade never fed those rumors. There was no grand farewell tour. No dramatic press statement, just the quiet ending of a show and his disappearance from the spotlight. But as time went on, he started to open up. His explanation didn't involve drama or scandal. It was far simpler, in its own way, more powerful than anything fans had imagined. In calm, thoughtful interviews, Wade reflected on River Monsters with a clear sense of finality. He explained that he had quite literally accomplished everything he set out to do. The entire premise of the show was based on tracking mysterious freshwater creatures' legends that had terrified locals, fueled rumors, and baffled scientists. By the 9th season, those mysteries had been solved. Some shows can go on forever, he said. His could not. He wasn't disappointed, bitter, or frustrated. In fact, he was proud. Wade had always believed in the original mission, to search, to reveal, and to demystify. Continuing after that mission was complete would have been dishonest. He could have stretched the format, fabricated new threats, or settled for less compelling species just to keep the cameras rolling, but that wasn't him. He respected the audience too much to give them anything less than the truth, that deep sense of responsibility to his viewers, to the animals, and to the core idea of the show ultimately, led him to walk away. Continuing would have felt like betraying everything River Monsters stood for. The series had never been about flashy entertainment or manufactured drama. It was about mystery and discovery. And once there was nothing left to discover within that specific scope, the only right thing to do was to let it go. But Wade wasn't done exploring, not even close. After River Monsters, he realized that his curiosity hadn't vanished. It had simply shifted. Instead of hunting specific fish, he began looking at the broader health of the ecosystems those fish depended on. That led to his next show, Mighty Rivers. This time, he investigated the planet's great waterways, uncovering the threats that were destroying them, the solutions that might save them, and the ways human activity was altering some of Earth's most vital lifelines. This eventually opened the door to an even wider range of stories in Mysteries of the Deep, where Wade delved into unexplained underwater phenomena from drowned cities to bizarre marine species, always with his trademark: caution, deep research, and devotion to truth. His storytelling energy, scientific curiosity, and integrity carried over from River Monsters into these new projects, proving one important fact: Jeremy Wade was not a one-show wonder. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing answers. He could have turned River Monsters into an endless money-making franchise, but he chose the harder, more principled path. Years later, that choice only confirmed why the show had connected so deeply with audiences. It was never about over-the-top drama or flashy goodbyes. The truth had always been enough, and Wade didn't slow down after River Monsters. Many assumed he would retire from public life after nearly a decade of facing dangerous predators and traveling to the ends of the earth. But instead of fading away, he shifted gears, throwing himself into projects with a broader mission. River Monsters had been about uncovering the truth behind myths. His new focus was on exposing a far more urgent threat: the decline of the environments those creatures called home. Mighty Rivers flipped the script. Wade wasn't searching for legendary beasts anymore. He was investigating what was destroying the rivers themselves. Each episode examined a major water whale like the Amazon, the Mississippi, or the Danube that had once teemed with life, but now faced alarming decline due to pollution, overfishing, and human interference. Drawing on years of first-hand observation, Wade became both narrator and investigator.
Oh.
The tone was more reflective, the urgency greater. This wasn't just about the thrill of the chase anymore. It was about what happens when the chase ends. When the creatures vanish, not because they've been caught, but because their habitats can no longer support them. Wade had seen it happen firsthand. Rivers that were once alive with fish now eerily empty. Places he'd visited during river monsters already altered in disturbing ways. This was no longer just storytelling. It was a warning. With mysteries of the deep, he expanded his scope even further, exploring lost cities, sunken ships, and unexplained sightings. The format was looser, but his approach never changed curiosity without sensationalism. His calm, grounded narration made even the wildest subjects feel credible. Through these projects, Wade's passion for conservation became undeniable. He used his platform to promote awareness of endangered species, disappearing habitats, and the fragile balance of freshwater ecosystems. For many viewers, he was their first introduction to these animals and environments, and he took that responsibility seriously. He worked closely with environmental organizations, spoke at educational events, and wrote about the importance of protecting freshwater resources. In truth, his post-River Monsters career wasn't a departure at all, it was a natural continuation. Because at its core, River Monsters was never just about catching fish. It was about respect for nature, for mystery, and for the delicate line between human progress and environmental survival. On the surface, River Monsters looked like an adrenaline-fueled fishing show full of mystery, danger, and exotic settings. But for those who paid attention, it was also a lesson in dismantling fear and replacing it with understanding. From the beginning, Wade approached every legend with two key questions. What is this creature, and why does it frighten people so much? In answering those questions, he often revealed that the most feared animals were the most misunderstood. Supposed man-eaters turned out to be scavengers. Rumored killers had been misidentified for decades. And as fear gave way to fascination, revulsion turned into respect. These so-called monsters weren't villains, they were survivors, vital parts of their ecosystems. In this way, every episode became a lesson in conservation. By focusing on individual species, Wade made environmental issues personal. Once viewers had met these creatures, seen their beauty, power, and vulnerability, it became harder to ignore that many were disappearing because of human actions. Wade never preached. Instead, he told stories that made people care. By the time River Monsters ended, it had done something few shows managed to do. It changed how people thought about the natural world. Wade's legacy was never about just catching fish, it was about illuminating the misunderstood, defending the fragile, and giving a voice to creatures that had none. That kind of impact doesn't need sequels